Okay, is it recording? Okay. What's up, party people? It's your main man with the battle plan. I haven't made a video on this channel in, I think, literally, holy shit, has it been since college? It's been almost 10 years. Congratulations, you're getting a video from me today. Woo! This game, as you know, this channel started with Empire Total War. Literally, I bought the game as a kid on its release. Started with Medieval 2. But I really started making videos with Empire, and apparently we're talking about Empire Retrospective. I want to know how CA just figured out they fucked up with a lot of this game, or at least if that's what this is. I don't know yet. I've only seen the first three seconds. So let's just go ahead and get into it. Let's get into it. Let's see what they think. Let's see what CA thinks. Just like I said, let me see if I can turn the, hold on, let me see if I can turn a little bit of it down. I personally loved this game, but people fucking hated it for years. And do not let the recent gaslighting on the subreddit and all the other things let you think otherwise. This game has legit been hated for years. So unless the response is, oh hey, the community backlash was insane, because up until like, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, everyone, like I said, just hated this game. So we're gonna see what CA thinks and what CA Retrospective would say, because it was very ambitious.
Greetings, Total War fans.
What up?
My name is Basia, and I'm Senior Community Manager.
Too southern to
Total
try to
War
pronounce that. I'm
Greetings,
gonna butcher it.
Today, we're going to be talking all things Total War Empire, and I am joined today by amazing developers, Ellie, Scott, and Tim.
Hello.
Ellie, why don't you say a few words
Ellie,
about
Scott, and
yourself?
Tim.
Hi, I'm Ellie. I work as the technical art director on Total War. When I was working on Empire, I was hired as a cinematic artist.
Oh, okay.
Awesome.
Okay.
Tim?
Yeah, hi, I'm Tim Gosling. I am an
What, Tim?
AI architect for Total War. I helped develop the framework for building the AI across the Total War franchise's campaign layer.
Oh, okay, campaign. Okay.
I was brought on for Empire as a programmer focusing on AI for the campaign.
Awesome, thank you. Scott?
Hi, I'm Scott. I'm currently the battle architect, which means I'm in charge of the technology.
Gonna say anything about that? Not gonna say anything about that. He just started.
At Empire, I was a gameplay programmer, having worked on Rome and working in the battle team.
Let's then start with probably one of the core questions.
All right, bet.
Why Empire? Why this setting?
I
Yeah.
think from my perspective,
Good question.
Originally when
I don't know. I don't really think it's a good question, but we're gonna
I
just go
didn't
with it, I
really
guess.
understand the setting. Like I thought, oh, isn't that kind of like boring Napoleonic reconstruction?
What? Oh, well, that's
But then
fair.
the more
That's
we
actually
got
kind of
into it,
fair.
And I think, watching things like Sharp and Hornblower, things like that, just really got the setting. And then by the end of it, I was like, actually, this is my favourite Total War setting that we've done. I think I really kind of got it by the end, even though I don't think I did right at the beginning.
Yeah, so I mean, I was hired and I didn't really have much context of the setting at the time. But from like a cinematic perspective, it was really fun for doing like drawing movies and stuff, and just the scope.
I'm not gonna talk on that. I think the dueling and the movies and whatnot were kind of mid. But I mean,
so much variety.
I'm also very impatient, so I skipped most of them. They are actually really cool. Like, I don't know.
It was fun to work on. I mean, the scope is really very broad. And,
Yeah. No,
there was some really
I think-
interesting elements coming out. I remember.
like I said, I'm just
pulling
interested to see.
some of the like ship construction archives and having, like,
Right. See, I imagine the research for this game must have been a lot of fun. That, I imagine, was a lot of interesting things going on.
Here. I mean, I'm not really. I don't know much about ships, but this was fascinating. I mean, we're trying to recreate this period.
Just because I need them most of the time. I mean, let me see if I can move my face.
First game I've worked on.
Because I don't want to
see
be.
that stuff happening.
I remember going down to
There you
Portsmouth and getting on the HMS Victory and looking around the boats as well.
As somebody who's not British, some of these things are going to go right past me, which is just
Like,
fair.
the scale was,
You know?
Total War was always a game about scale, but Empire, the scale was.
I had to close my bathroom. I forgot my
entire
bathroom was
world,
open.
and it was
Ooh.
kind of a very ambitious level of
Yeah.
scale. Was it both,
Yeah, a little
but
bit.
also what made it kind of pretty challenging to work.
A little bit, buddy. A little bit.
There's a crazy amount of detail going on there, right? And yeah, I mean, people wanted to capture that. It's fascinating. And then gradually see.
Obviously, they're not gonna shit talk it. I just, you know, this is kind of CA.
Then turned into shit.
Double
again,
speed.
seeing them bobbing around in the
You
water.
know.
That stuff was fascinating to see, and it was exciting. But yeah, interesting times.
I really want to see those ship schematics now. Like,
They
so.
were huge as well. They were like the size of this sofa.
Oh, yeah.
You had
I
to like
mean,
roll them out. I'd actually forgotten about them until you just mentioned them, but they were just on a desk, weren't they? They were
Yeah,
massive.
they're massive. They were like.
see, that's the thing. I don't know. I don't think anyone has accused them of not doing. Well, no. It's weird. It's weird because
something like that.
CA will get, especially for the older titles, like especially for things pre-Napoleon, CA will get accused for not doing enough research. And I mean, to a degree, yeah, because they did that weird thing with Egypt where Egypt was like ancient Egypt. But Empire, I think they did a good amount of research for Empire. Granted, for the time period, some things were odd, and they wanted to include things like the American Revolution. And that, depending on what you think about that, I don't personally enjoy how they laid out the United States. And I don't know if they're going to talk about the engine later or not, but the way they did the engine too means that it's not a moddable, like the map itself isn't moddable, right? Like I think Darth Mod, well, they're not going to talk about mods. Darth Mod makes that game like 1,000 times better, but if they could change the map, if they can actually edit the map itself, that game, the modability of that game would have been insane. Especially for the time period and the tech behind things like weapons. I think somebody tried to make a Rome 2 inside the Empire engine or Empire game with their engine, and it was close. But then Rome 2 came out, and they were like, oh, "Okay, what's no point in this?" So I mean, it's not that they don't do research. It's that sometimes I think, it's about finding out what needs to go in the game, what doesn't need to go in the game, right? It doesn't.
Pretty nuts. But it's interesting where the realism collides with.
I mean, nowadays it's not that they don't get case. Nowadays they don't get that much shit for not doing research. Nowadays they get shit for just omitting things because they want to omit it. It's not even a research thing. It's like, why did you forget that? And I haven't played the recent games, but I mean, I just remember that being a big problem, especially for Rome and for parts of Empire.
For a long time.
Napoleon, I don't think they did. I don't think people had that complaint for Napoleon or for Rome too.
The level of detail that we added there, I think, was kind of unprecedented. The fact that even within the ships, the men are properly responsible for loading the cannons and firing them.
Right, like they did a lot of shit. I might skip this part because I don't really care. I also have to go to work in like a few minutes. I didn't want to delay making the video because otherwise I just wasn't going to make it.
I remember it caused a huge problem to the designers because every ship was physically modelled in the sea as it bobbed up and down, and there were panels.
I will say I've watched the other ones of these, and this dude right here, he knows his shit.
But as the ships moved like this,
he knows.
you'd hit every time you
At
fired.
least he seems like he knows. Like he feels like he knows everything, and I'm like, okay, man, I'm just gonna listen to him talk about that.
And never do enough damage to penetrate. And the designers were just like, how do I balance this? I don't understand. Because we just sort of just built a simulation essentially. Where there you go, there's a game out of it now.
It's interesting where we go into maybe, quite a lot of detail. I mean, the campaign map was obviously very, very big, but if you look from the transition from like Rome to Empire, so Rome was all it was all grid based, and then Empire was all sort of vector based on the campaign map. The effective resolution was something like 30 centimeters across the planet, which was sort of not sure we really needed that.
Ooh.
We had it though. If you wanted to pinpoint something very, very accurately, you could do that. That caused interesting issues.
Are they going to get into most of Empire's issues, because Empire had a lot of fucking issues, especially on launch. It had it still has a lot of issues. Tons of issues. So maybe we'll go over it. Maybe we'll go over the issues. We'll see if we won't go over the issues.
Imagining.
We're not gonna go over the issues. They're not gonna do that. They're not gonna go over
That's
all
very
of the bugs.
And also leads to my next question,
Oh.
because you did kind of already dipped into working back at that time, and for example going to a museum and uncovering copies of ship schematics. How was it working back around that time on Empire at Creative Assembly?
Pretty intense at times, right? I mean, it was a much smaller team back then.
Yeah, which is why I don't give them a lot of shit for this, because Empire was like. I think after coming off of Medieval 2 and Medieval 2's DLC, Empire was the first game they ever released on Steam, and it was they were still not huge. They were not that big. They were still not that big of a company.
A certain amount of overtime had at different points.
Like.
I
It's still a very niche thing back then. Nobody knew what the fuck Total War was back then, even after Empire.
From London, and working on the trade each day. But laptops back then, even much bigger now, quite heavy. You're running up and down escalators, that bag will snap. I got through a lot of bags.
Big bags.
It sounded ridiculous, but it's like...
That sounds like a lot of workout as well.
yeah, good exercise, right? Good exercise, but busy times.
I just remember, obviously, as Tim says, we're a lot smaller. The scale was much.
Let me rephrase what I said. It's not that they were small; they were smaller than they are now. Like Warhammer blew this motherfucker up. The days of Empire and Napoleon are a long time ago, and they had a lot of grace back. I think people had a lot of grace for them back then. People had a ton of grace for them back then. Even after Empire. Everyone hated Empire. I think they still love Napoleon. I don't actually know. I don't see people play Napoleon on the subreddit, even though people have begun to, suck Empire's dick now. You know what? I'm not gonna say much. I'm not even on the subreddit that often anymore. But when I was growing up and I was playing tons and tons of Empire, I think Empire might actually be my most played game on Steam. Most, like a good half of that's probably even in Darth mod. I don't know if I don't know how big. I don't know if I would classify it even back then as a small company. As a small game developer, they were smaller than they are now, and obviously that a lot of that had ended up showing in the polish. But I don't think that's an excuse. Just think that's interesting.
Smaller than it is now, and
I don't know why I paused it. You literally just said what I said.
We didn't really have any designers. We did start having designers in Empire.
Yeah,
but
you can tell.
A lot of designers were actually more focused on history. They were reading these history books.
Yeah.
These Osprey history books where various units from history were detailed and what uniforms they wore and how they fought, and that was kind of their design. It was like, so they say we want this unit of dragoons. And they can get off their horses. Like, okay, well, how does that work from a gameplay perspective? In those times, that wasn't the focus. That was sort of the focus was on us to solve a lot of those problems, because they were sort of really doing the world building and deciding what it was, and we were kind of deciding what the game was almost, which was, I really loved that, and I think that sort of stayed with me ever since. But there was a lot of that where it'd just be like, this is how it worked in history. There you go. That's what we want. Okay, how do we make a game out of that? And that's very different now. Like now, we will think much more about the design early on and the gameplay. And in those days, we kind of constructed, like I said about the naval base, we constructed a simulation and we sort of saw where the gameplay was after the fact.
Okay.
And sometimes that worked really well. And
he's gonna say, you can kind of tell. I'm sorry, that's mean. That's mean, Eddie. Don't say it. Like, it's not... but you can kind of tell. Especially, not from base game, but from the DLC they added later. From some of the historical units they added later. And from how they handled America as a whole. Like, I don't like. I like that they gave America its own campaign, but America shouldn't have been the only country with its own campaign, right? Like you could have added a French Revolution campaign. You could have added a Prussia campaign. Like, well, Prussia to Germany is way too early for that. But you could have added other campaigns, and they didn't bother to add the rest of like there's a lot that I feel like I really hope they go into this. So I'm not gonna rag on it, but I really hope they go into why they stopped the scope where they did instead of making it truly global. Like I get, it's a lot of work to add China. It's a lot of work to add Africa. It's a lot of work to add the rest of South America. But it kind of pisses me off that the rest of South America is not on there. Like I can understand. It sounds weird for me to say this. I can kind of understand why they didn't add China and Africa, purely because that's a lot, and that's a lot. Like that's like, okay, what the fuck, a lot. But South America is still at this time mostly Spanish colonies. They still, they have their own rich histories and whatnot. But a lot of that was not at the time, at least in my understanding, uber complicated compared to North America. Like you boiled down North America, you could have boiled down South America and also added that too. That's just me though. That's just me. You could have added a campaign for South America. I'm gonna hope and pray that they add more context to why they made the map the way they did, because you can kind of tell they wanted and I think this is me personally. I'm not trying to add race into it, but this is me personally just saying. It feels like a very British-centered understanding of the time period, and that's why they added who they added, or that's why they didn't add who they didn't add, I guess. Because it feels like a lot of it was, how did the British conquer India? Boom, like that. And that's why India has such better map. At least, as someone who's not Indian, I can't say if it's better than the way they do America. But the way they do America versus the way they do India is kind of dirty. At least in terms of like map size and quality. And when I say America, I mean the United States, not necessarily the Americas as a whole. I think the way they do the Caribbean is fine. The way they do Mexico and South America is dirty, but the way they do the Caribbean, from my understanding, is like, okay, well, you can't have 1,000 small islands. That's too much. Anyway.
Sometimes it didn't. Sometimes it was like, it's well simulated, but it's not fun. And then we've got to add the fun back in, or somehow make it fun, or like sort of guide the simulation in some way to make it more balanceable. Now I think we do that ahead of time. We think about those things before we get to them, because these things are expensive. You spend 6 months to make a simulation, and then you're like, no, that's not very fun. And I remember with the sailing, the first thing we did was we actually made it work like a sailing boat. So you couldn't sail into the wind, and you had to tack like a sailing boat, which means... See,
that's a good change. That's a good gameplay change, because that would have been boring as fuck. That would have been... I'm sorry. People love Empire First Naval Combat. That would have been boring as fuck.
Why is my ship going off over here?
That would have been like, what the fuck? Wow, no.
And so those things, we kind of come to them and like...
That's a great change. That's a fantastic change. I'm glad they did not do that.
Historically, but it's not what works for the players.
I'm glad they did not do that. I'm very thankful that they did not. I think whoever stopped them from doing that, thank you.
Because the team was smaller, there was a lot of overlap of the things you do on a daily basis. With less specialism, you'd be sort of pulled into very different areas to work on things. So as a cinematic artist, I was obviously working on some of the drawing movies for that project. But then, we ended up being also directors for motion capture shoots, and we'd be in the suits doing the motion capture, and I think actually some people in this room might have also been doing the motion capture at some point. We'd be trying to recreate like sort of this historical feeling, and we'd look back at some of the footage we'd done for some of this dueling stuff and be like, it doesn't look realistic. We need some professionals. And we'd be shooting it in schools and the holidays and in the sports halls, because we didn't have a proper department or like set for that.
Yeah, that's what I meant when I said they were definitely smaller. Like they were, they were not Warhammer. Let's go throw money at Empire, or they couldn't. I don't think they could have done that.
From a coding perspective, I think we sort of knew we either knew every line of code, or we knew the person who knew that line of code, and they would sit within a few seats of us, and we could ask them about it. Whereas now, there's so many more programmers involved in building our tech that to answer a question, whereas I might have either known the answer myself or asked the person next to me. I might have had to ask.
I'm not in this to be mean.
people
I'm not in this to be mean.
The answer up
Hold my tongue on
over
that.
multiple kind of conversations because of the scope and scale of our code base and our tech. Whereas then our teams were so much smaller.
That's true.
That you could just you sort of knew how everything worked. Everything was a little bit simpler and a little bit easier to fit into your head in one time.
Mr. AI guy, you gonna comment on that?
Yeah, I think in a way you had more latitude.
Everybody's like
more responsibility for what you were doing in a way. I mean,
what the fuck are you gonna say about that?
Responsibility now, but it's as a smaller team, as you say, everyone knows each line of code, who everyone is. It's like, well, I have to get on and do a thing, and a bit like Ellie says, your scope is sort of get the job done. I mean, I was very lucky in the sense that I was brought on.
He knows how to talk. He knows how to talk for real.
More or less at first in the company, it being sort of something people were doing more on the side. So I was given quite a lot of latitude to go write an AI for this new title, which is quite a lot of responsibility given I'd not done that before. But the organisation trusted me to do it, so I went and did it. Hopefully.
I'm not blaming him. I'm not saying it's his fault. I'm not gonna do that. That would be mean as shit. Don't anybody do that. But what I will say is, why the fuck did y'all do the task to do it if he never done it before? If y'all know every single line of code, like that is okay. If y'all know every single line of code, I will say, like I said, he's talking without talking. I love he knows how to do. He knows that corporate speak. He knows how to. He's very good in front of the camera. He knows not to say, "Hey guys, why the fuck did you leave me with all this work to do?" he's not gonna blast the company for, "Hey, this is my first time doing this. Maybe you should give me some help." Obviously, they helped him. I'm not saying they didn't help him. I'm not trying to be rude. Like, I'm joking. I'm not being mean, but I'm not trying to be mean, rather. It's definitely one of those things where it's very clear that was not a great decision. not him. I'm not talking about him. He's very competent. I'm sure he's insanely competent. That's not what I'm getting at. I'm getting at everybody knows what is going on. So when we got the end result, which was Empire on launch, remember Empire on launch, even Empire now, the AI is fucking atrocious. Like, it's one of those things where it is one of the first things people fix when they make mods in Empire, is that the pathfinding is fucked, especially in battles. Actually, the campaign AI is actually not bad. The campaign AI it makes some interesting decisions sometimes. I think on launch, it didn't know how to do naval landings, but that was pretty much one of the only things it didn't do properly. But the battle AI is especially for the vanilla, one of the most confounding things of all time. Like, sometimes I just won't even do battles because I'm just sitting there like, it's not even gonna shoot at me. So why am I even I'll have to play a battle because I know for a fact if I play it, I could fuck with the AI enough to get next to no losses. Not necessarily in sieges, but especially on the actual field battles. If I have a good artillery, especially some howitzers, I can just sit there and just pound it until everybody's dead and get no losses. I'm not saying it's his fault. I'm not saying it's his fault. I am not saying that. Don't anybody else blame him specifically, because again, I'm sure he's competent. I'm saying, you telling me the entire company knew that was a problem is kind of pisses me off a little bit. because that means that everybody knew it was a problem. That's what I'm hearing, is that everybody knew it was a problem, and they just told you to fix it. But this is the first time you've ever done it. That's what I'm hearing. That is what I'm hearing. So I'm going to continue on, and I'm going to try not to be mad. So we're gonna continue on now. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it.
You know exactly what it is, and you'd be like building the AI, but we're not doing that anymore. Like now the campaign's going to work like this. You know? But the whole AI is built for this. You know, this last discussion we had, things were changing so rapidly because you know what the game was still kind of cementing, whilst you're trying to write an AI to play one game and we're making another game without you realising.
Total War Empire used a revamped engine. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, I think
I'm
we
fucking
got to the
psychic.
point where
I knew they were going to talk
the
about
engine
this.
used for Rome Total War and the expansions was really not showing its age, but there were restrictions in it that made it hard to do things. And
What
I
is
think
vector-based instead of
learned a lot,
grid-based?
We've
So
sort of grown as an engineering team.
kind of wish they kept it
and
grid-based, but that's just the main thing.
We understood the problem domain really well. We'd made like several Total War games. Like now we can make the Total War engine to end all engines. And like I said, it's like yeah, we did a lot of things better. But you know, we made a whole bunch of new mistakes as well.
That happens.
And
that happens.
you know, we were trying to build an engine, whereas previously I think we were just building a game. We were trying to build something that would last longer.
And see, that's why I can't fault them for some things, because it's like they're building it like this is not fucking now where you just log into Unreal or Unity and just pop the engine up and congratulations, you have all these features. They're like building an engine from scratch is not easy. Building an engine for a strategy game is not easy. Building a engine for what is effectively 2 games at the same time cannot possibly be an easy undertaking for a company at their size at that time. Like, I give them a lot of grace when it comes to people should give them a lot. I have no fucking weight in this community, but people should give them grace, and I'm glad that people are now giving them grace for making the engine for Empire that is still being used today. Like, last time I checked, from Empire, I believe, up to the first it may have even been all the Warhammer games, still use this engine, or a version of this engine. So, like, I feel like people have to realize this is the first game on the engine as they're building the engine. So there were gonna be problems. That's why I'm like trying not to be like. That's why I'm saying don't be mean to anybody up here for being honest about shit like that. There were gonna be technical issues. That was gonna happen. I think they just weren't. I think people probably at the time weren't prepared for how many technical issues there were gonna be. Especially when it's a PC game. So obviously, depending on what PC you have, you may have issues that nobody could ever see coming. Obviously, it's different because PC builds weren't as popular back then as they are now, and you know, PC market was also a lot smaller. But you know, it's still the engine itself is still.
I was coming in, you know, very junior on the team, but the process I was told earlier is that, you know, essentially CA had built a new engine for every other game up to that point. The idea was now to build a new engine for Total War going forward, where
and I will say
you could
that
replace bits of it modularly, right? So that you could swap out the campaign or the battle or parts.
They were successful on that. So let's not mince words. They were very successful on that.
You could rebuild bits and then keep what's still good. So that would allow much more effective incremental growth. And instead of having to do a complete rewrite every time, you just rewrite the bits you needed to, but you'd still have a good, stable foundation to work from.
And that's certainly happened. I mean, we have sort of probably replaced every element of it, but we have sort of, it's been there all the time, having bits taken out of it and new bits plugged in, but we've still been able to play the game in it, and that's always
Exactly.
been really important. Beyond that point was being able to always play the game and try things out. So we might say, we really need a new pathfinding system. Well, we've got the old one, let's write another one and sort of swap them over, but we've still got the framework of the game to be trying these things out in. The thing we learned, I think, with Empire was when you start from scratch, it takes such a long time to get to the point where you can even play the most simple game, the most simple campaign, most simple battle.
Right.
And we never wanted, I think post that point we're like, we don't necessarily want to do that again, because you just spend such a lot of time just getting back to where you were. And then you find out all the things, the nice things that were in the previous engine, you're like, oh, we haven't done that anymore, or that bit that used to do was quite nice, we haven't done that. And it would take a long time to get all that stuff back in and working in kind of a new framework. So I think at that point we decided, a full rewrite is generally not what we want to do. We want to be able to pull things out that need replacing and replace them with a new thing. We always want.
And see, that's why I was frustrated earlier about the AI thing, because again, this is a good management decision. This is a good management decision. Both of these things are good so I don't know I'm not going to blame them for a bad management decision and then not give them credit for a good management decision. That's a good management decision. You know what I mean? Like, it is irresponsible to do, especially when the games get bigger every time, to make a new engine every other time. Right? That doesn't make any sense. Even especially when, the first four games, they were similar enough to where, you didn't have to remake the engine. But if you were to go from Napoleon to back to if you're going to go from Napoleon to Shogun, you're really going to rewrite the entire engine for Shogun 2. Like, that's what you really want to do, right? Rewrite the entire engine for Shogun. That would be ridiculous. Especially, and then if you count Follow the Samurai Follow the Samurai is an expansion, and so is Rise of the Samurai. They're both expansions. But if you, for example, were going to count them as separate games, which they're not. But so that's 3 games. Oh, we're going to rewrite it again. Oh, you're going to rewrite it again for Warhammer? You're rewriting the entire, for Rome 2 rather? You're going to rewrite the entire thing for Rome 2? Absolutely not. See, that would be an irresponsible waste of money. And time. Because then because you think about the bugs we have to worry about in Empire. If they kept rewriting the engine every 2 years, we would never, especially with current technology, bugs would be insane. I'm gonna just be honest. Rewriting an engine every 2 years. Now, granted, that means that they would be, I think, if they were still on this track, which I'm glad that they're not. I think during this time period, a lot of companies were doing this. This wasn't just a them thing. I think a lot of companies were a lot of game developers were okay, wait a minute. We want to have something solid going forward, so we don't have to spend so much time on the engine and not on the gameplay. And I think they tried, what it sounds like to me, and maybe they'll clarify later, is that they were doing both of these at the same time, which is probably not a good idea. Or maybe it is. I don't know. I don't work at a company this big. Maybe that was the most optimal way to do it, is finding out what you need in the engine by making a game while making the engine. That's a possibility. But to me, it sounds like they were doing both at the same time, and so maybe they didn't have the resources to do both. But I don't know. Maybe they'll get more into that.
I know a roadmap of where we're going and how we want the technology to change over time.
We're smart being modular. I'll say that for
everything
sure.
Away and start again. It's just too time consuming and just takes too long to get to the point where you can do something again and start looking at things. So I think that was a lesson learned there, that we haven't started completely from scratch again since that point.
Yeah.
I would say every part of it has probably been replaced now, or at least modified, but we've never sort of started from a blank slate again since
Right.
Empire.
Exactly.
Actually, from art design perspective, that means when we're starting anything new or trying out anything new, it was much faster to be able to say, let's try this stuff out. We had an engine that was.
I can't speak on that because I don't know shit about it.
At that point,
I don't know shit about it. I'm sorry.
Prototype things, and having to wait again for some of these things to be rewritten. So from that kind of perspective, you could play test things, you could try things out. It was much faster then to to kind of see where your product was going and then where those features were going, rather than starting from a point of nothing again. So.
Yeah, and I think the engine, the new engine was necessary to try and meet the ambition of Empire as a game. I don't think you could really have built that on the previous tech. So it was going to be necessary to rewrite to support that level of
I don't agree with that. I don't. I mean, the naval combat for sure, right? Naval combat couldn't. I don't think anyone's even modded naval combat in Medieval 2. But I've seen some of the mods for Medieval 2. And like, I'd say like maybe 60% of that game is moddable to the point where you create a version of Empire. Now, granted, again, I've never modded Medieval 2. I don't know the process. I don't know how difficult the engine is to work with. But from my understanding, you know what? Actually, I'm not gonna. Actually, I shouldn't comment on that. I don't know. It's okay to say I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure. It just sounds odd to say it's not. It's odd to say it's not possible. At least because to get the game, this is very much talking in like past tense, right? What we know now, right? Absolutely. But I feel maybe because it's at the time. Whatever. I'm gonna move on because I don't have a lot of points to make here. I think it's just an odd. I don't know.
ambition, that sort of scope.
Yeah. Maybe that's what he's talking about.
So if you're gonna have to do it, try and build that infrastructure that gets you ready for longer term. I think that's the thing we needed to do, and that's what we did.
Sure.
I believe the modular approach also helps with creativity, so you can try out new things. As you just mentioned, you can then have your ambitions and try also a much bigger scope, and you don't need to spend as much time to do essentially a lot of the same things.
Yeah, and the scope, like Tim was saying, was immense, and originally we wanted to model the entire world, and we sort of decided that maybe that wasn't we literally couldn't do that and make it from a technological perspective, but also from a gameplay perspective. How do you make every single part of the world interesting and fun to play? And that's how we moved to this system of trade regions. I think you were going to talk about that.
Originally, as Scott said, the idea was to just model everywhere entirely, and that was a wonderful ambition, but that's a lot. That is a lot. I mean, it was a lot to do what we did, and there was a point where the team realised it wasn't really possible to do that. I mean, at some point, ambition has to match reality, and it's like, okay, well, how do we cut this down and still make it interesting and still give the feeling that the whole world is there? And so, yeah, things like the kind of the trade theatres and the idea you could fling your ships across the map and they'd appear somewhere else, and not quite sure where they'd end up. That kept the world big and interesting, and we captured a lot of it, but obviously not everywhere. And but the balance was struck, and hopefully we got that about right.
I think that arguably was a really good move for the gameplay. Like I really enjoyed the way those theatres worked.
The way he sighed, man, he seriously looked like he had something to fucking say about that. He looked like he really had something to say about that. I don't know why they shifted the camera to him. He looked like he was pissed off at what he said. I don't know if that's what I'm probably reading too much into that, but I don't know why they cut to him like that. It made it sound like he was pissed off. It's like,
sending my ships down to the West Indies and sitting on like the Spanish trade route or whatever, and then or being attacked by pirates and all these things where it's like, this is
also, again, I want to emphasize that they kind of failed at that. Like, it's not, I understand the goal. The goal was to make every place interesting to play. It is not, though. Like, again, South America and Africa specifically are not fun to play. Or not fun to play. Not that they're not fun to play. They're not really, there's nothing really there, right? Like, South America, I mean, everyone. If you take the Spanish over all of their South American colonies get independence for sure, but then like, what do you do with that? Like, what are you? Why would you take Mexico? Like, why are you taking Mexico? Who? Why would you want to take Mexico? Like, I mean, the Americas are not like 9 times out of 10 not interesting, unless you want them for tax revenue purposes. 9 times out of 10, the Great Britain just ends up absorbing their colonies anyway, right? I mean, you might take some stuff in the West Indies, like the Caribbean, for sure, but it is usually half the time, you wait, you just take that, you know what I mean? Like, I don't necessarily think that they made the Americas fun. Like, I feel like they should have either not included them or included both of them. That's just how I feel. That's how I feel about it. They should have either included all of them, or like not done it. Like, it would have been cool if they just didn't do it. Adding the U.S. as a campaign was cool. Warpath was cool. Warpath was cool. But even with Warpath, I'm like, you could have made. Why did you give why did you make the Plains colony one big? I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm not gonna. This is not a complaint video. This is not a complaint video.
Campaign. And I've got this like other campaign that's going on that I'm sort of almost like a little mini game, and I think it actually worked really well.
Could have made the U.S. playable in Warpath, and he didn't do that either. But that's a whole other thing. Could have modeled it after the states that they or the territories they relied in. But again, Eddie, stop complaining. Stop complaining.
Literally theatre where you can do a different sort of thing. It was interesting. That made it fun.
I think actually Empire was the game I got to play the most. Because, I mean, when we were at the end of the cycle of development, we'd have some time we would all be testing it, right? We would all be playing it, so I think that's why we remember it so fondly. But yeah, those features are really fun.
Total War Empire is set in 18th century, making it one of the most modern Total War titles.
That it is.
What were the challenges and
Napoleon,
working
but yeah.
on this game?
I think from a battle perspective, gunpowder.
Oh, we're gonna talk about gunpowder.
Changed everything. So.
Are we going to get into the gunpowder game?
Of historical warfare, but just from a technological perspective, it was opened up a whole lot of new challenges. So we're always used to dealing with projectile weapons with a kind of curved trajectory, and that helps out a lot with line of sight, because we model everything and we simulate everything in the battle. So every single projectile in the world in Total War is flying through the air. It's not just a kind of a hit detection and yes, we hurt that person. Every projectile is modelled. Now, when you're firing an arrow, you've got a nice big.
That is very computationally intense to do every single one of those like that.
Trajectory.
I mean, granted, they've been doing it for years, so I'm sure.
What that means is that, like, at the height of a man, it's fired from his actual where his gun is, and it's very likely that when you've got a flat trajectory, your shot is going to be obscured by a little bit of scenery. And that's very hard to understand when the camera's up here and you're looking down at a unit here and you're like, why is my unit not firing? It's like, well, if you zoom down to the level of your man's rifle, you'd see that he's obscured. It's like, well, that's not how players necessarily think, or they'd have to learn that, So that gave us a lot of challenge to how we do that. And I remember we also tried to model things like the firing drills that the very formed line infantry would use. Things like rank fire, where you fire and then kneel down and the row behind would fire, and they look really ordered and really cool and synchronized. But we found that actually those in the simulation played a lot worse than the units just constantly firing as fast as they can. So we had to spend quite a lot of time sort of skewing the balance to make these things actually work well. And same with firing from buildings. I remember we had, obviously a building's supposed to give you loads of protection, and we'd have the guys smashing the windows out and using the windows to fire through. But we also had code for the guys at the bottom that were aiming up at the windows. And we found that as soon as the guy would get to the window, the guy on the ground just shoots him and kills him. And you're like, well, now the buildings are way less effective because they've got 15 windows versus 100 men firing. But how do we make this balanceable? That's the exact opposite of the outcome that we wanted. And so how do we make our simulation sort of model gameplay that we want, which is that being in a building gives you, good protection and good fire output. So. gunpowder was definitely a problem.
But it was also quite atmospheric as well, because remember like all the the smoke effects going off on battle. And I remember from cinematics like shooting some of the battles, just so fantastic. You get all this depth with all the smoke, and it was really really nice moments. I think
it hung around for ages.
Yeah.
That smoke, it just was like there, and the whole as lines were firing, the whole battlefield was smoking. Like you barely see anything.
Yeah.
I will say they fricked the fuck out of that damn in Napoleon. Like, it's very clear they started in Empire, but in Napoleon you can get Shogun 2, Fall of Samurai, Thought's smoke is fantastic. Thought's smoke, I think is perfect. And I think a lot of the things that they set for Thought's is Empire plus Napoleon in Japan. And I'll be honest, it worked out pretty fucking well. And I think Thought's is, if we do get an Empire 2, well, we won't get an Empire 2. If we get I think most people in the audience are like, no, are really wanting a Victorian era Total War game, would probably fall somewhere shortly before Thought's. So it would be more like Napoleon than like Empire. And so they wouldn't have things like rank 5. Well, they probably would have things. I don't know. We'll see. They'll probably have Neo Fire and all that other stuff. Well, I mean, if we get it, I don't think we're. I'll be honest. I don't think we're getting another Gunpowder game. And if we do, it'd be great. But I don't think we're getting one. But judging by what they're talking about here, you can kind of see a lot of the things that they kind of thought about when making Thought's. And they'll probably they'll do an interview with Thought's later, and I can see that there's going to be a lot of stuff from Empire that they're going to be like, oh yeah, we learned this lesson from Empire. We learned this lesson from Empire. We learned this lesson from Napoleon. We learned this lesson from Napoleon. And they're going to talk about that there. Because I think Shogun 2 is, I would say, probably one of their most successful historical titles. I mean, obviously, I don't think it ever outsold. I think the Warhammer games are definitely still the best selling. But I think as far as like historical games go, it's either Rome 2 or Shogun 2 that get like most of the accolades, or not accolades, but they got a lot of positive attention and a lot of good sales, good reviews, and a lot of people still play them. But yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah, I think I seem to remember it caused problems with things like range and that when we had the
Yeah.
and stuff like that, right? Because actual battle ranges were quite long, relatively. So.
And yeah, I think in Napoleon, and again, Thought's, they made them considerably smaller. Empire maps are way too big. They are way too big. And the artillery range is hilariously big. It's like, what?
Going back to the whole,
I remember when I was playing multiplayer battles, the rockets were ridiculously spammable because you put them in a little corner with some spikes, and you're like,
shooting cannons over. It's like, yeah, okay, so actually we have to kind of contract things a bit to make it more.
one of the reasons I think I talk about why they took ammo out for some reason.
So you want the simulation to keep it as real as possible, but at the same time, still got to make it fun.
I think it's a constant challenge in Total War generally. Is like we're trying to make games that are faithful to history, but in reality, being in a war is probably not a great deal of fun. And we're trying to make this a fun experience.
True.
An experience that can take place in a reasonable period of time.
He's not
so
wrong.
That's constantly a trade-off that we're making between paying homage to history, but also at the end of the day, it has to be a fun experience, and that's the kind of question we're talking about.
Questionable whether they achieve that at launch, but it's okay.
It's, not always easy. And I would say with Empire, our first point, and often is still our first point, is like we build it how it would be, and then we look at it, and then we're like, right, how do we make this fun?
From the context of your discipline, what were the challenges and what were the most rewarding moments from working on this project?
Challenges the scope. It's just very, very big. So from an AI perspective, you're having to manage a lot of things. How do you keep that working in a way that's reasonably performant and plays it reasonably effectively? And you can get some sort of fun but daft moments. So, I mean, this is Empire, like Total War, but at one point when we had the diplomacy up and running, the AI would happily negotiate amongst itself and then just decide, no, this is fine, this is good, we're good now, this is how we'd like things, at which point the joke was, it's become Empire, total negotiated settlement. Everyone's just happy. That's great. I'm glad the AI has done that. It's done its job, but not actually what we were after.
I think the level of detail that we went to was a whole nother. Like having artillery where we properly modelled how that artillery was loaded. So, you know, one guy is there poking the kind of gunpowder down the barrel, another guy's there putting the cannonball in.
I gotta go to work soon, man. I might watch this at 1.5 speed. It's almost over.
Cool. So
what time?
What happens if the guy with the holding the what looks like a big cotton wool bud, I'm sure it's got a proper historical name, that sticks a thing down the cannon? What happens if he gets shot halfway through and like so I have to pick that thing up and then when we, as I said, we put these same things in the when the cannons fire in the ships, exactly the same thing's happening. There's guys loading that cannon exactly as that cannon would have been loaded.
I mean, that's cool.
I think that's
but she asked for challenges?
What
Am I tripping? Did she ask for challenges?
Because we could have not done that stuff and it would have been a lot easier.
True.
And we probably would have had less issues because of that. But then when you go back and look at it and probably how it was, because at the time it just felt like a massive pain. You know, like why are we going to this level of detail? It's kind of nuts. But looking back on it now, I can see that quality that created that wouldn't have existed otherwise, and see.
I will say, and this is another piece of flack that the Engine and Empire get on a pretty regular basis, is that it's over animated. Like, people think it's cool that you get to watch your dude stuff a cannonball into a cannon and watch it fire, but like the hand-to-hand combat, like the actual I have the one-on-one. Oh shit, I gotta get it pretty soon. The actual one-on-one combat is like almost. Why is it there? It's kind of buggy. It looks weird in some places. I mean, it's a cool concept, and if you're a Total War player who's playing for like a YouTube video, it's really cool to watch a dude stab it. But as a regular player, you're like, what's taking so long? It's because all these and melee combat. Because all these animations are playing and da 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 da. And sometimes they don't make any sense, right? Like, for some reason, a dude without a bayonet is somehow stabbing a guy with no bayonet. He's stabbing a guy with the gun, but there's no bayonet there, so it just looks goofy. Again, not blaming anybody, just saying, just talking at this point. I gotta get going pretty soon, so I'm gonna watch the rest of this at 1.5 speed. Because I gotta get done. Because I also have to edit this in a bit. So
see the guys inside actually loading the cannon to return fire, or you have a building and you can look through the window and you can see the entities actually in there fighting one another. That stuff which seemed nuts at the time and made it very difficult to make. Now I'm not involved in actually having to finish it and dedicate my life to making it.
That's fair.
I can drink that in and go, yeah, that's
fair.
I think from the art perspective, there's always the level of detail.
Well, and that's the thing. Empire had a lot of detail, and they put a lot of. You could tell they put a lot of work into it.
And I remember the challenge at the end. I think possibly it was the battle design. And I think and how settlements were that we were still kind of to the wire.
I'll give them
that. Trying to figure out and make it fun. And,
for sure.
From the artist's perspective, we were working on all these battle maps. We didn't have any sort of terrain tooling at the time. We built our own tools for sort of later games. But at that time, we were just working in 3D Studio Max and placing these things by hand. And when we got to come and change those designs, we artists had to go back and manually change everything. So that was a really big challenge. I remember at the end of Empire, just the manual sort of iteration of things. And obviously, we've learned to sort of reduce that kind of iteration time at the end to make that more efficient. But it was a big learning curve, I think, for the art teams. So.
Speaking of the art, I remember the Star Forts. Do you remember those?
Oh.
And these like big Napoleonic, I guess, settlements that were kind of shaped like stars, so they could focus fire. And they were quite an awkward shape. And so we ended up just modelling them as one big thing. Normally we would build a settlement by out of small parts. But
we all
just
know.
Ended up modelling this thing like,
my computer, the game dies.
And then we're like, okay, how do you make it work? Like this bit's too narrow, or this wall needs to change. Like, no, that's how it is. If you just change that, it's going to be a huge amount of work. Like, okay, right, well, we're just going to get this working. And I remember, like, how do we scale these walls?
The frame rate.
And then we had these, like, so we just get the guys to throw grappling hooks up. And then
Most
we just have an animation of someone throwing a grappling hook up. We actually had physically modelled rope, so as the grappling hook went up, we had, like, a Verlet simulation, like, animating the rope.
I will say that's cool, though.
All this stuff where, you wouldn't, if you suggested that you were going to do that now, and you told someone how long that would take, you probably would get a funny look. But then it's just like, well, that's just what we did. And But yeah, I just remember we just get these things and like it was almost impossible to iterate on it. So it's like, okay, yeah, we'll just make that work.
Finally, what do you think is the legacy of Total War Empire?
I think it set a precedent for us in terms of scope and complexity and detail that you can't really go back on. We set a line in stone, and that set an expectation that people sort of expect for Total War. That detail that people are expecting to see has to be there, and I think that's what Empire set. It's like this is what it can be like. This is what a Total War game can be. It can be this huge scope of where you can, pretty much conquer the world, and I think that's always there for every future Total War game to live up to.
Once we got to a point, we released this game on this engine. It was just then it was like the creative imagination had opened up. Like I remember the leadership was like talking about we could do this game right, so we could do this game right. So it just opened the doors for all the kind of different eras and things we could do because of what had been built with that game and how we could sort of evolve over time. I think it was a real creative, I think, just eye opener for me as an artist. We go, okay, this is something I want to hang around for.
I was gonna ask, we didn't really talk about art that much. Like
It was amazing that Mike Simpson put on his wall, and it was the most ridiculous, hyperbolic kind of statement about that. Undoubtedly, the finest strategy game of all time. I'm paraphrasing it and getting it a bit wrong, but it was just ridiculously positive, and we're just like, yes, that's it. That's what we want.
And that's all for today. Big thank you to our guests, Ellie, Scott, and Tim.
Bro,
Thank you to everyone who's watching it right now at home.
You didn't get
Next
chance
time we'll be back
Okay.
with Total War 3 Kingdoms. And if you don't want to miss it,
Wait, what?
hit the subscribe
We're talking about Napoleon?
Click that notification bell.
Wait.
In the meantime,
They're not gonna talk about Napoleon?
And leave us a message. Tell us about your favorite moments from Total War Empire. And yeah, have a great day.
They're not gonna talk about Napoleon? They're just not gonna talk about Napoleon. They're just not gonna talk about Napoleon, I guess. We're just not gonna talk about Napoleon. I don't know why, but that's fine, I guess. Alright. I'm gonna edit this, but then I gotta go to work, so bye bitches.